Hello, my name is Travis, and I'll be taking you through a short introduction to Parlay. In this introduction, you will learn to navigate around a Parlay project, create scenes, acts, dialogues, and quests. What you see in front of you is a sample game, Squiggle, that comes with Parlay. To see this game, you should first have imported it into Unity, and then pointed your copy of Parlay to the project's working folder. For more specific information on how to do that, you'll need to read the guide that is downloadable from our main page and also comes installed with Parlay. Let's start by breaking the screen down into its sections. Your game will be divided into acts and scenes. Acts and scenes are old concepts from stage acting and lend themselves well to most game designs. You can, of course, build your whole game in just one act and scene. However, unless you're building a small game, like Squiggle, you will most probably find it more convenient to split the game up. On the very top, you can see a tab saying 01 Egg's Big Adventure. This is the only act in Squiggle at this point. We preface the name with 01 only so that the acts appear in the same order in Unity. This is a best practice and not a requirement. Below the act, you can see a tab that says 01 Introduction. This is the first scene in Act 1. In this case, the introduction is our way of teaching our player how to play Egg, the main character of Squiggle. On the left hand side, you can see another tab layer. This is the dialogues in the scene. In this case, the dialogue is for the NPC chirps. When we add additional dialogues, you'll see more tabs running down on the left hand side. For now, I've made the Parlay window smaller than it would normally be when I'm using it. This has been done mostly to make the video a little clearer. If you look at the dialogue display window, that's the central window with all the boxes in, you will notice that the dialogue display span off to the right and down off the bottom of the screen. You can navigate these using the scroll bars on the right hand side or the bottom. However, for your convenience, you can click anywhere in the dialogue window with the middle mouse button and then drag the mouse. This will automatically drag the whole scene, giving you quick access to all the elements of the dialogue. The blue boxes in the dialogue window are the dialogues. Each dialogue has a few choices that can be made from it. The dialogue with the white circle at the top left is the anchor dialogue. This is the first dialogue a player will see. Clicking a dialogue or a choice will select it. You can then use the left mouse button to move it around on the display. The choices are the purple boxes, and there's a blue arrow line between a dialogue and each of its choices. Then there is a purple line from a choice to the dialogue that it will lead the player to. Additionally, you will notice that there is a brown line sometimes returning from a dialogue back to its original parent dialogue. This is not always the case and is a choice that you make. On the top right of the screen, you can see the quests. In this particular case, we only have one quest in the introduction, which is Find Out Skills. When you click on the quest, it immediately appears in the dialogue window, with all of the different lines that show the relationships between the quest and all of the dialogues. When you navigate around, you can see that this very quickly can become quite a complex matrix of behaviors, which is much easier to manage visually. If we look at the quest boxes themselves, the quest is displayed in a green box on the window. Underneath the green box, you see 4 blue boxes. Each one represents a standard objective for the quest. On the top right, we see a dark blue box. This is in fact an optional objective. So this quest has got 4 normal objectives that must be finished in order to complete it, and 1 optional objective which may or may not be done before the rest are completed. Parlay relies quite heavily on different colored lines in order to show you how objects interact in a scene. As with the dialogues and choices, the quests also have their own special set of colors. The green lines connect a quest to each of its separate objectives. As you can see, if I move this to the left, you can see that each objective has a separate green line from the quest to it. The cyan lines in the scene have a slightly different meaning. Cyan line shows a trigger. So if you look at the top left dialogue, there's a cyan line pointing right down to the Find Out Skills quest. This indicates that when this dialogue is seen by the player for the first time, the Find Out Skills quest will be triggered. The yellow lines show completion. So in the case of the jumping objective of the Find Out Skills quests, where you are expected to ask chirps about jumping, when chirps tells you about jumping, in the dialogue tree here, the yellow line shows you how this dialogue completes this objective. You'll also notice that there's a cyan line from the same dialog to a new objective, which is to try jumping a number of times. In this way, we can simultaneously complete one quest objective and create a new one through a dialog trigger. Okay, so now I've navigated around the introduction. Let me show you how to create a new scene so that we can extend this game to have a little bit more than just an introduction. So if you click on the scene button on the top, you'll see that you've got two menu options, the new scene and delete scene option. So we click on new scene and we have to give our scene a name. So 02 to keep it ordered, and we'll call it Escape from the Wolf. As soon as I click OK, there's a new tab on the top, and all we have to do is click on that tab to get to the new scene. You'll notice that this scene has no quests and no dialogues at this point. When you create a new scene, you should already have a fair idea of what characters and quests you plan to do in that scene. For the Escape from the Wolf scene, we're going to have two dialogues. So to create them, we go to Dialog, we say New Dialog, and we create the first one for the Wolf, and we create a second dialogue for the Woodsman. As you can see, we now have the two separate tabs, each one representing the different NPC in the scene. In Scene 2, we're going to have two quests. The one is the primary quest of defeating the wolf, and the second one is going to be a sub-quest where we have to pick some mushrooms for the woodsman in order to get him to help us. So, for the first quest, we type New Quest, we type in the name of the quest, defeat the wolf in this case, and we get our first quest on the top right. If we go back to quest and type New Quest again, we can type in pick some mushrooms. So this is critical to building your solution, is to know what your quests and NPCs are going to be before you start just crazily typing away and clicking all over the place. Now we need to create the dialogue for the wolf. As you can see on the screen, there's nothing there at the moment. If we go into the dialogue space and we double click, we'll get a dialogue edit box. Now this edit box is described in more detail in the actual document that comes with the product. But for summary, the text is the first thing that the wolf will say. So in this case, we will just simply say, hello, tasty. And in a repeat text, which would be the second text that it says the second or third or fourth time when you come back, we will say, hello again, tasty. Now, you can leave this blank and it will just continue to repeat the first quest. So we click done, and there you can see our first dialogue separated by the two lines, and this is our anchor dialogue. In terms of the woodsman, we'll create a simple dialogue where he will just say, hello, little stranger. And that will be good enough for our woodsman. At this point, the dialogues have no options and lead to nothing more than goodbye. Okay, so at this point we notice the typo in the hello again, simply saying hell instead. Double click on the dialogue, opens it up, allows us to edit it. Also notice that if I type incorrectly, we'll get the red underline which you can right click on and do corrections. So that's the auto correction built into the system. So now we're going to start editing the first quest. Defeat the wolf quest should come up the first time the wolf shows you that he thinks you look tasty. You'll notice that the box for the defeat the wolf is in different places on each dialogue. So it remembers where it is on each of the different dialogues to make it more convenient for you to align it and put it into its place. Now we want the defeat the wolf quest to be triggered by this dialogue. In the dialogue edit box, you'll see that there is a quest event. Quest events are things that fire when that quest option is triggered. So when the user sees this, this will happen. In this case, we will say that the quest event is seen the wolf. So if we create that quest event and we go into defeat the wolf, you'll see underneath here that there's a quest requirement. We will take the drop down and say seen the wolf. When we hit done, you'll see the blue line. This indicates that the trigger from this causes this to happen. So once again, the quest event is seen the wolf, which means that this dialogue fires off this event, and defeat the wolf is now started by seen the wolf as its quest requirement. And that's how easy it is to create these relationships. Okay, so at this point we have a quest which is started by dialogue, and now we need some options for that quest. So what you need to do is move the mouse cursor over the quest itself, right click and drag off, and you'll get your first option. So our first option for defeat the wolf objective will need to be get some help, which will presumably require asking for assistance from the woodsman. So we have our first objective. We go back to the woodsman himself and we'll see the two dialogues. So at this point we want to be able to ask for assistance from the woodsman. So off the anchor dialogue, we right click and drag off, and we can say, can you help me defeat the wolf? Okay, so this will be our question to the woodsman. His answer needs to be created. So for now we're going to make him want mushrooms before he will help us. So no, I am afraid I can't, little one. I need some mushrooms first. If you pick them for me, I will be able to help you with the nasty wolf. Okay, so simple enough. Quest objectives. When you say this, we want it to link to that objective. So here, hello little stranger, can you help me defeat the wolf? And no. At this point we only want this dialogue to be available in the same way that you've seen the wolf. So we don't want you asking for help until you've actually got the quest. So just like this will only start when you've seen the wolf, this dialogue will also only be available once you've seen the wolf. Now we have to create the details for the Pick Some Mushrooms quest. We also have to trigger it. So if we bring the quest up onto the screen, you'll see that it hasn't got a trigger at this point. So if we create a trigger, a game trigger in here, a quest event will be get me some mushrooms. And when we click on the quest itself, just like before, we can select get me some mushrooms, and the quest is triggered. Off the quest, we right click in the center, drag off, and we create an objective, and this objective will be get count. This is a special case which will implement the number mushrooms for the woodsman. And we can also say 1 of 10 mushrooms for the woodsman, and we decide that we want 10 of these. So this count number here will count down each time and will show get 10 of 10 mushrooms, 1 of 9 of 10 until 0 of 10 mushrooms. When you're done, you can change the text quest to I have the mushrooms and should return to the woodsman. So now we have our first quest. To count this quest down, we're going to need to link it into the game for each time that Ig collects a mushroom by walking over it. Now we'll go into the scripting of that later, but for now I will show you that you get a quest event, an objective event that will fire from in the game each time a mushroom is picked. So we will create that event and we'll call it picked a mushroom. So each time a mushroom is picked in the game, we will fire picked a mushroom, and this will count down. When it's completed, this quest will be considered done because all of its objectives are done. So now we'll need a new choice from the woodsman, and that will be I have your mushrooms. Can you help me now? This will lead to, of course, little one, I will meet you there. So now we're assuming that we will code the woodsman to help out, but we need this objective to only be available once this quest is completed. So this quest event for completion will be got all the mushrooms, and then this dialogue will have a quest requirement, and that quest requirement will be, hey, where's my Did I type that right? Got all the mushrooms. Okay, you can type it out as well. So, once you complete this quest, this will become available. Additionally, we want to stop this from becoming available once you've got the 10 mushrooms. So what we will do is on picked mushrooms, we can add to this dialog here that this is no longer available once you've picked all the mushrooms. To do this, we type a comma, we type not, which is the inverse, got all the mushrooms. Now you will see a red line pointing back, showing that when you have completed this quest, this dialog will no longer be optional, and this will. So when you go, you will only get these two dialogues. So what we need to do now is make sure that the Defeat the Wolf quest is completed by this dialog. Now as you can see here, the Defeat the Wolf quest is in the way of everything else. If I press down Control when I click on the wolf and I drag it, it will drag all of its objectives at one time and make it easier for me to move it off. And I can also click on both of these at the same time and show how these two quests interact with each other. So Can You Get Some Help needs to be completed either by this dialog, or we can just use Got All the Mushrooms as our trigger and say Got Help is related to Got All the Mushrooms. However, we don't want to use that one because we want to force the player to actually talk to the woodsman. So here we'll create the event woodsman will help, and that event then becomes how you complete this objective. I don't think you can see that at the bottom of the camera, unfortunately, but yes. So once you chat to the woodsman here, this quest objective is done, but the wolf itself is not dead. So we need to create a new quest objective, Face the Wolf. At this point, we'll go back to the wolf itself, and we will then see him. We need to make sure this event is only visible once you get, let me just move it so you can see on the display. We only want Facing the Wolf to be available once you get some help. So the woodsman will help now. Now you need to go and face the wolf. So we completed Get Some Help, and now we have to face the wolf. This objective becomes visible at this point. So now you can see that when we go back to the wolf itself, let me just here get all these quests out the way. So as you can see here, we now have to face the wolf, and we need some dialogue off the wolf saying the woodsman is coming to help me. At this point we can make Cowardly Wolf run away. So we only want you to be able to get that assistance if you've actually got the help from the woodsman. So we're going to double click and say, oh no, I'm really afraid of his sharp axe. And we'll link that to the choice you had, and then we want to make sure that that is only available for the same reason Face the Wolf is. So if we double click on Got Some Help, you'll see that this is Woodsman will help. So we only allow you this dialogue when the woodsman will help. So now, same as that, this is available. When you click on it, what we want to do then is actually complete Facing the Wolf. So at this point we will say that the quest event for this dialogue is Face the Wolf. It's nice to use simple conversational state words here, and this objective will be completed by Face the Wolf. Additionally, what we'll do is create a player event on this objective being finished, which would be Make Wolf Run Away. Now that will trigger a method on a script on the player called Make Wolf Run Away, and this is how we create events inside the game that are tied to Parlay. These events we will carry over in later tutorials. So that concludes the tutorial for now. As you can see, quite a simple process, but it ends up with quite a sophisticated state. And this is how Parlay helps you to maintain and create your quests. Obviously what we would do here is hand these very tiny descriptions I created and over to a copywriter who will then open these up and really write some dialogue with more meaning. Thanks very much. I look forward to our next tutorial. We will cover a little bit more of the detail of how to bring all of this into Parlay, into Unity itself.